Commission to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Kurt?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any issues with the agenda?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Down under item Roman numeral 6 and the sub-items, I just wanted to kind of understand, when you say presentation of final report and that it has action, what does that mean? What is intended, like action on presenting it, or do we have to vote on it or something?
No, there won't be a vote on the presentation. The vote will be later on under 6B2.
Oh,
I was anticipating that would be a distribution of it at the time. Apparently, it's already out right now in front of us all.
So
So
then-
it'll kind of be real quick for the
Kind of move
presentation.
to present it, yeah.
so then,
We'll ask the writing committee to present it formally, I suppose, although it's already in front of us.
I see. And then B, under 6B, call for motion to accept final report. Is that like, somebody move, then discussion can happen under it?
Yes,
That's the sub-item one, like review it. Is it like
that will be the
Kristen?
discussion.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I'm fine with this.
Okay.
I,
Do we have a motion to approve
I'll
then?
move to
So
approve.
moved.
Hey, Dave, is there a way you can turn up the volume a little bit? We can't hear out here.
If you're talking about me, I'm sorry. I got sick about 7 weeks ago and I haven't recovered my voice yet. This is the best I have.
We can't hear the attorney. Turn up the
Jonathan just said he turned it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I made a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, you might have to turn that back down. I'm getting feedback here.
Make sure it's not too
We have a second. We have a second. Vote in favor. It's accepted. I am not aware of any announcements. Nobody said anything. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Any issues with the minutes as presented?
Move approval of the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and
Brian asked for a minute to review them since he just got here.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Call for vote for approval of the minutes. Minutes are approved. We move on to the presentation of the final report. Kristen, would you like to handle that as the chair of the committee?
That's fine. I don't really have much that I need to say.
No, it's in front of us.
We sent it out to everyone with a few weeks in advance, asked for comments back. We received comments. We then actually met as a committee and each time with comments and went through them. So put a lot of time and attention to it. We did the best we could in the time that we had. And I thank the other two members of the committee for devoting so much time to it. This is the final. It came out this morning with just a few little tweaks to it, and it's in front of us right now.
Excellent. And I want to express also my thanks, my gratitude to the writing committee. The three of you have done a major job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call for a motion to accept the final report.
How about discussing first?
Discussion, I got caught on this, the other day on Robert's discussion follows the motion.
Oh, okay.
It does, right? Yeah, it was right. Okay. So do we have a motion?
I move we accept the final report.
Second?
Second.
Open for discussion? Brian, I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry to hear you're feeling poorly. See if we can do this without having the problem with the feedback. Can you guys hear me? I'll try not to breathe too deep in here, but I tend to do that. Kristen, thank you, and to your subcommittee for putting together the final. My remarks are kind of a procedural, and I'd ask just kind of take a minute, because I think when I finish, you guys will see the light. And that what I'm trying to do is basically ensure that the 10 months that we spent together are actually something that amounts to something. And you'll understand what I'm getting at in a minute. I read paper all day long, reams of it. So by the end of the day, I don't want to read a book. I don't want to read something entertaining. I want to watch a movie. I'm a real movie buff. And as I started to go through the final report and think about the process by which we arrived at it, two movies came to mind, Jaws and Apollo 13. Jaws came to mind as I started to reflect on this because I thought about Twint going to the Amityville public meeting where they're deliberating on their shark problem. And they basically, he introduces himself and he says, "Y'all know me. You know what I do for a living." Well, after 10 months, y'all know me. You know what I do for a living. I litigate. I look at everything through attorney lenses. And throughout this, I think you would all recognize that I've tried to ensure that what we did was consistent with the law. And I've tried to point out things where I thought we ought to have a debate or discussion about it to get some clarity so we understood where we were going. And this is in that spirit. It leads me to the next thought that I was having about this process and how we got to this final report. The movie that comes to mind is Apollo 13. And they've had an explosion on board. Jim Lovell looks out the portal, and he sees the gas venting out of the capsule service module. And he rings down to NASA and he says, "Houston, we got a problem." I think in a way, study commission, we got a problem. But we can cure it, okay? And that's important here. There's a solution. The problem is, I think the way we arrived at this violated the open meeting law. It's unfortunate, but it could be fixed. Here's what I mean by that. We left at our last meeting, if you remember. Chairman Botting said, "This ends our scheduled meetings." And at the time, we had some questions pending with the county attorney, you recall, relating to what the scope of authority of the commission manager was. And Dave said, when we get that back, we'll evaluate whether we want to have a meeting. But we did get that back, and we didn't have a meeting. So then, at the same time, at that last meeting, right, we had been, the subcommittee was appointed to draft the report, right? To my recollection, and it's not totally dispositive, but my recollection was we didn't really figure about what we were going to do. We just said there'd be a draft report. We would communicate it. What happened was that draft report was communicated out to the entire study commission. Now, it was done individually, and at the time, what happened was it was on February 21st. That was a Monday at 9 a.m. And what happened was Kristen, as chairwoman, sent it out from the subcommittee to the entire study commission and said, please submit comments by Friday of that week. So that was 4 days. So I could not do that as a litigation. We should, one, right there, if we had had a public meeting, we should have had one where we could have discussed, how does that deadline work for people? We could have deliberated. I did not ask for it because it would have engaged in all of us having a communication about what the deadline is and voting on it. Instead, one person kind of put out there what they wanted as the deadline that Friday. We didn't get the opportunity. It should have been decided by a majority what the deadline was. It wasn't, and it should have been done in an open meeting. So that's one violation right there of the open meeting law in my mind. Second, that report was circulated out to all of us from the subcommittee chair. That means it was all of us, that's more than a quorum of 5. And that constitutes information that would lead us to deliberate toward a decision, right? So we read it, thought about it, what are we thinking? Should there be edits? Right there, that information communicated to a quorum. There should have been a public meeting where that would have been presented, reported out, just like the final today is being reported out. That draft should have been reported out, and that in itself is a violation by not having a meeting just for that. But then, go further, comments were solicited back. People did send in comments. I didn't see them. Kristen asked that they just send them individually back to she or just the subcommittee of 3. People, to me, that is information being communicated. That was deliberation. You are deliberating toward an end result that results in an action. That action is the approval of a final report. Along the way, you were refining it. It should have been brought out in a public meeting. The comments that were sent back individually back, that is basically a serial meeting that violates the open meeting law. I don't care if it came back individually to the subcommittee or whether everybody sent it back and everybody was CC'd on it. However it happened, that should have been an open meeting. And by not having that and just trying to do it where people sent back individually their responses to the subcommittee, that's a serial meeting. It goes around, you're using a proxy, Kristen, to engage in deliberation to circumvent the open meeting law. Now, I don't mean that in the sense that it was, maybe deliberate. It was inadvertent. I think she was meaning well. I'm just saying that is the result, and that's what's out there. So now they have it, and they take those comments into account, and they edit the report. I don't know if they spoke to the commenters who submitted information, but somehow they arrived at a final report, made some tweaks, right? Here's the problem. It should have been in an open meeting law, and here's what was lost. One, the ability to actually talk about the draft report and have a colloquy about it and have discussion about other people's comments and how we might edit that draft report. And so that kind of shortchanged us as commissioners. The whole point of getting together to meet collectively is to exchange ideas to improve the product. Instead, it was kind of individually done. Now, the other thing is it kind of shortchanged the public because they should have been part of that. As you know, even when we drafted the bylaws, remember, Dave, in the beginning, you had a version you put out there. I sent in a version. They both were ready, and we talked about it at the opening meeting. We marked them up. We went home. I made the edits. We came back to another meeting. We got a couple tweaks. We felt good enough, and we approved them, and I went home and typed in those tweaks. We did that there. When we came up with the recommendation, I was on a subcommittee then with Kristen. She crafted the recommendation. I had some red lines. That was cool. We were inside a subcommittee. When we got done and reached consensus amongst ourselves, we sent it out, and that was presented in a public meeting. And we may have made a tweak or two to them, but we presented it in a public meeting, and we discussed it, and then voted on it. This departs from that process that we have followed, but it also, more importantly, to me, clearly triggered the open meeting law. And for me, we weren't having meetings, so there's no way that I could come in through email and engage in deliberation without violating the open meeting law. Nor could I submit comments because I knew I'd be violating the open meeting law. So if I had, oh, well, I'll put it in by the deadline, I would be in violation of the law. I'm not going to do that. This is the first opportunity I've had to come and raise this issue about this. And so what does this all mean? I mean, at least 3 different violations of the open meeting law, each and every one of them an independent basis for bringing a challenge to what is our final result, this, that we're going to take action on. That was deliberation directly connected to producing this final report. And, you know, I want, after being here for 10 months and spending all the time that we have spent talking to each other, getting to know each other, and doing this good work, I might not agree with the recommendation, but I sure as hell want the thing to like have some meaning and be of some use. I mean, and right now, the way it's positioned, I'm telling you, somebody could come in and challenge this. I've been aggrieved. I haven't been able to share my comments, okay? I had comments. I haven't been able to share them. That's number one. The public's been aggrieved. Other commissioners have been aggrieved by the series of things that I'm describing here. Any of those group or all of them could bring a challenge to this. What's the remedy, right? What is the remedy if they prevail? And I think there's a good basis to believe you'd prevail. The remedy is that the action you took, which is this final report approving it, right? That action is null and void as a matter of law. That's the remedy. Okay? Do I want to basically put in my resume that I spent 10 months in a study commission only to have the recommendation challenged, declared null and void? Do I want to like go around saying that was my accomplishment? No, I doubt any of us do. Moreover, our commissioners, our Kootenai County commissioners have said that this recommendation, they are going to rely upon it making a decision, right? They're not going to just independently make it on their own. They're just going to pass this on to the ballot. They're relying on us and our recommendation. Even if I disagree with it, I can at least recognize that. They're depending on us. What does it do to leave us in a position where this could be challenged? And it will be. This is really, you've heard those open meeting, the debate that happened here when people came in and gave public comment. Someone's going to challenge this, right? And it's a layup. It's a layup to bring this thing down based on these 3 violations that I pointed out. And there are more. I just won't take up your time. So, you know, what's the solution? I mean, I'm not fooling around here. This is serious stuff. What's the solution, right? Not cure it in this meeting. You can cure things like this. Right now, we have an agenda to go over the final. We just approved that final agenda. We don't have anything in here that says, let's go back to the draft. We don't have anything in here that says, let's hear Brian's comments. We don't have anything in here that says, let's hear what the comments were from these other people who submitted them on the draft. We don't have anything like that. It's not built in here. That can't be remedied right here. The prudent thing to, and even if you did it, it wouldn't be valid. You're opening up another challenge. You're opening the public meeting law by basically amending the thing at the meeting, adding things that the people didn't have notice of. There are people out in the public who could have seen this and said, you know what, they're just going to the final today, so you know what? Blow it off, why bother? I'm not coming. But if it said people are gonna go over the draft and exchange their comments, they might have comments that I wanna hear that because I'm a member of the public. And I go back to something that's really important. I know you guys go like, this damn lawyer, what the hell's wrong with him? Why is he bringing this up? Because I want my work for 10 months to be worth something, right? That's why. I don't want it to get challenged on some technicality. And here's what the statute said. Really important, because this goes to this, what I'm saying, the gravity of it. Under Idaho Code 74201, right, this is where they state formation of public policy at open meetings. It's the legislative intent behind the open meeting law. And it's important to hear what it says. It says the people of the state of Idaho, in creating the instruments of government that serve them, do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies so created. Therefore, the legislature finds and declares that it is the policy of this state that the formation of public policy is public business and shall not be considered in secret. what happened in this draft report, and I don't ascribe, like this is evil motive, this is what happened, and because we weren't having any more meetings, I couldn't bring it up without violating the law myself, which I won't do. This is the only chance I had.
You could have called for a meeting.
Yeah. but,
No.
Yes,
how
but I don't
come-
think
how
you
come
could have called
Well,
for a meeting.
throw me under a bus, but I'm trying to help you out
Oh,
here.
No, I'm not throwing you under a
Brian,
bus.
Brian,
However,
You
I
know?
noticed that your comment is not fixing, you're not bringing it
Yeah,
up.
it
No,
is.
You're not bringing it up. If
Well, I
you-
will.
If you want to discuss the lawyer's opinions, we have a
No,
review.
no, I don't- Dave,
We have a
don't.
review of the final report. This is the discussion.
Dave, don't cut me
If you want
out.
to bring up the lawyer's opinions, bring them up now.
No.
If you want to bring up this other stuff, this is the public meeting.
I just
for
told
this
you, you
discussion.
can't do it. You got a
Yes, we
final
can.
agenda.
You have the review of the final report,
Okay.
and they.
I'll tell you what, let's not debate each other right now. Let me finish, because I'm close to finishing about how we do this, okay, Dave? And then you can have your say, and if you want, perfectly fine, just blow it off. Just know this, someone's gonna challenge this thing, and all your work is in jeopardy. And a simple fix by having another meeting could fix this. And why is it such a problem? Why? We met first, last May 21st, I believe it was. You have a full year to complete the work and report it out. We've got several weeks until May 21st. There's plenty of time. Taking another week or 2 weeks to basically have the meeting, cure the defect I'm talking about, right? Doesn't harm anybody. It fixes what is a problem that I'm saying somebody could come in and challenge, okay? I want that to be fixed. I think it's advisable to do it. It's for the commissioners to be taking up and considering putting something on the ballot, and somebody has challenged it, and it's litigation. I can imagine being a Kootenai County Board of Commissioner member and seeing this thing in litigation, be like, yeah, let's just put it on the ballot, right? With the risk that the judge might say, it's null and void. I mean, who'd want to expose themselves that way? So if we cure it, which is a simple fix, it's like, let's have another meeting. We might have to have two and get there the right way. We're golden, and we've just wiped the board of anybody who might have an objection, want to bring a challenge. That's all I'm saying. So blow me off, fine, but I'm gonna be heard, and now I'm done.
well, I'm glad,
Knock it off!
Dave, that's, Brian,
Knock it off, somebody's trying to speak.
my question is just really a simple question. Assuming,
Excuse me, guys. Sorry, just for the benefit of everyone in the public, I've been watching online, and the video feed's been off ever since you talked, started speaking.
We need to talk about that.
oh,
I don't know if you want to repeat your statements, once we get the video back.
well, it's,
It
Jonathan,
should be recorded as that.
Jonathan, is this recording?
Dave,
That's gonna make it really hard to do minutes. My question is really just a simple one, and I'm not gonna debate this. Open meeting law is open for the county to decide and the state to decide. But my question is, all those things are valid if they are valid. And I understand your concern about bringing it forward to the group via email. I understand that concern. But why didn't you just go to the county? Why didn't you go to Jonathan or Nancy a week ago or 2 weeks ago and say, I'm real concerned about what we're doing. Could you go and let me know if I'm on track, that my concerns are valid? Because some of the things you brought up, like sending a comments to a subcommittee, are things that are done at other advisory boards. And that is without a quorum of people. So what happens is you send the comments, and then it is presented, to your point, it's presented in a public forum. So just for us asking for comments to 3 other people, which would be 4 people actually, and the deliberation was not really a deliberation as much as just trying to understand what Bryant and Tamara and the others have provided, was more just simply updating the report. And our plan, which I think Kristen may have put in the email, was all these comments that were sent to us are all going to be part of these minutes that we're doing today.
Yeah, that did not get put in the email.
Yeah,
Oh, it did not?
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I guess
I did not know that. I thought it was,
we were,
yeah.
the last couple of weeks, the three of us have been really working very intently back and forth, trying, Kurt works, so we worked around his schedule, and, we were scribbling things down. I had to go out of town because of a family issue, and so we were communicating via, Zoom, and, we did the best we could, and we did. I do now recall, Dave, you said I should say something, and I think I had a draft for that, and then I lost that draft and did it again. Regardless, the decision to do it this way was not my decision, and actually, the three of us came up with it, and I think Kurt, because he's our tech guru, thought that it would help us to get feedback that way, and so that we could then perhaps have a document that we could present that would be pretty darn close to final, rather than having this drag on weeks upon weeks upon weeks because of going back and forth and back and forth. So there was nothing nefarious. We actually thought that, or we feel that we didn't violate any open meeting laws because there was never more than four of us communicating. And I just, to add to what Dave said, it's a little frustrating to think that someone couldn't have picked up the phone and called me too and said, I have a problem with it, because I would have then wanted to look into that. And I think any of you calling me individually would not have violated anything. And I guess that's the frustration about where we are now. It seems like we make a decision to try something as a group, just like we were trying the Post-it note thing, and then at the end, oops, wait, maybe that's a violation. It would be nice if people came up. We have a second lawyer, and that lawyer actually participated in this, sent us comments that we worked into the report. So I don't know. I am not a lawyer. I'm a citizen. I came to this group because it is a citizens study commission. And I really expect, would have appreciated the courtesy of a comment from someone long before this.
Actually, I did. I sent a comment to Kurt on the 25th. I sent
Well, you
an
sent it
email.
to Kurt, but I didn't see it. So
No,
again,
we actually talked about it, Tamara, and again, based on what we thought was a subcommittee can get comments and incorporate it.
But regardless of what we thought, Brian is concerned that this is an open meeting law violation. And I think that we are well placed to take his concerns into account if it means one or two more meetings in order to have this clearly beyond reproach. Then I think we should do that. We should modify tonight's agenda to the extent we can, which is limited to discussion items only. And then schedule follow-up one or two meetings as necessary in order to solve the problem.
And by the
We
way,
do have on this agenda a review of the final report discussion. If someone wants to review the content of the final report, the legal opinions are content of the final report. We are free to discuss those tonight in open meeting. The comments that were received by the writing subcommittee can be brought forward in this open meeting. We can cure all of his violations in tonight's meeting without violating any open meeting laws.
and
Chairman,
by the way, just for clarification.
Give us your opinion, Brian.
I
Is
disagree, because the agenda says final report. You're talking about the final report. You're not talking about comments on the draft report that you received. And also, I don't have my comments with me.
Right.
I didn't bring my comments. I had written comments and I had markup. I don't have that. I didn't come with that. Really, this is a final report. And in here, there was some discussion about the final report, but, the comments that I had on the draft and importantly, the colloquy that would have happened if we'd had a meeting to discuss that draft and the comments on it, that's that's absent, and I don't see how you get there in the meeting tonight. You know, I think the cleanest way really is to allow the opportunity to put in comments, to have a meeting, discuss them, close it out, and then vote on it either at that meeting or a subsequent one, and do it that way, like we've done with some of our other things, like bylaws and even the recommendation we did back a while ago, and just follow that. I think that would be more consistent. It would free us of the potential for taint by doing it that way, and by doing it tonight, I think you still leave yourself exposed in a bad way,
Okay.
you know? That's my opinion.
Well, and I very much would like to receive your input. If you don't have that with you because you were constrained in regard to the published agenda, then we're gonna have to get that in a subsequent meeting, would be my point of view on it.
And
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment.
Phil?
We've all sat here for 10 months, not just one of us. We've had a public meeting every single time we met. 2 of them the public could meet at. The report was to basically write out what we have discussed in public. If there are any comments, the comments were to clarify. I think I saw a couple of typographical errors, but it wasn't anything that affected the actual research that we had done. Now, accordingly, I've been in government quite a while, and I have to respectfully disagree that the work of a study commission that goes to a county commission and a public meeting and ultimately to the voters to decide is at this point a violation of any public meeting records law. And that's my opinion, and I make no claim to be an attorney, but just common sense tells me as a citizen, if I sat here through 12 months and heard what went on, the group puts together the report that may include some commas and crossing Ts and so on, that at this point, it is our position to discuss it, if you have comments, and then to vote on it. That it has been through a long enough and detailed enough process and public enough process.
If I could comment on what Phil just said. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the work that you did on the report. I appreciate that it was a lot of work, even though I ultimately disagree with the conclusion. I appreciate that there was a lot of work put into it. But a couple of things. First, Kristen, did you say that our comments were going to be circulated?
What the intent was, Brian, is to attach it to the minutes, so to go to everybody, the public.
But it hasn't been.
No, it has not,
Okay,
because it
all right.
was.
So when I responded, I did note, and I think Kristen, you got my comments, I think. I did note that there was, well, I'll read what I wrote. Some of the following may be substantive and involve deliberation rather than simple editing, so may require compliance with open meeting law. And the reason I responded, because I was put in this quandary where you had to submit your comments by a certain date, or they weren't going to be considered. So I was put in this box where, I went through the thought process that Brian did, and he came to a different conclusion that he just wasn't going to participate. I thought along the lines that Phil just explained, and that was, we're ultimately all going to see these. We're working through this. This is a subcommittee. It's not a quorum. So I sort of compromised and said, I'll send these off, but with the note that there is an issue with the open meeting law here. Now, I've just heard that these were going to be distributed to us all, and I think that if we discuss the comments that we all made, that would solve the problem. But I also agree with Brian that it's not on the agenda for tonight, and I don't think it falls under the agenda item that we placed here. So I do think there's an issue, but I think it can be remedied. But I did see that issue, but like I said, I went sort of along the lines of Phil's thinking, and so in my own mind, I split the baby. But I was going to bring up some of the comments that I made because I think they go to ultimately the vote here, but since they're going to be distributed, I won't waste everybody's time with going over them. But anyway, I just wanted to get my 2 cents in there.
Thank you. Again, we didn't want to not include everything. And again, we tried, and hopefully you and Tamara were able to see some of the changes that you recommended were in there, like successfully and removing that word and all the other things. So we tried hard to go and we discussed each one of them, spent hours. Sunday night, we spent trying to come up with some additional stuff because we were able to get Tamara's, thanks to Kurt. And we actually tried to, we listened, we discussed them, and we really understood what we think you were trying to say. We made a lot of changes to that. So it was never that. And again, I don't know, I know from my experience of many years of open meeting law training, what I think is the right approach and what is right, but I'm not an expert on this. So the real question in front of us now is, what do we do? That's really the question, is we, setting a deadline to get comments is, again, what we do often in subcommittees on advisory boards. Again, so it didn't seem out of whack for me that that's what we did, because we've done it in the past. And not this group, but we've done it in the past. So it's an interesting question.
And also, Dave, when you mentioned, yes, there was an original Friday deadline, Tamara couldn't get her information to us, so Kurt reached out, we worked with her, he ended up having to transcribe her stuff, and we bent over backwards to, and that deadline, if you don't give a deadline, you never get anything ever. But we were very generous, I think, and that's why when he mentions we were working Sunday, we were trying to get something, the meeting had already been designated, and we were trying to put in the extra time that it took for the three of us to keep meeting, and we did. So, you know, what the group wants to do, the group wants to do, but I'm.
Well, I'd like to move that we,
Hold on a moment, Phil wanted to speak.
I'd like to ask a question of the three people who wrote the report and incorporated the comments. Is there anything in that report or anything that was incorporated by comments that isn't what we discussed over 10 months of meeting here in a public meeting?
I think to Brian's point, if he feels that some of his comments had deliberative impact on the report, then I think we should take that under advisement. I do not think that we put anything in this report that was not covered in the course of our various meetings, but this is supposed to be a summary of 10 months of meetings and ultimately the recommendations. So if we don't do that properly, then it's all for naught.
The agenda does include an item for the discussion of the final report. Any discussion of the final report would include the content of that report. Therefore, if someone has an issue right now with the legal opinions we've received, which may or may not be included in the report, I think they need to bring that up now, discuss it in the open meeting, and we're done with that. As far as the comments, do you have those comments available, Dave?
Yeah, I have all the
We can
comments.
go over the
I don't have-
comments. If there's
I don't-
anything substantive in them, we can discuss that, and we can deal with it here and now in an open meeting. And if you have a problem with the phrasing of discussion, review of the final report, then come up with a better phrasing and we'll edit the report, the agenda right now.
Well, I think we've still got a fundamental problem in that Brian doesn't have his comments with him.
Brian could have brought his comments. Brian can make his comments off the.
Well,
Got a good enough before Friday, don't you?
what if we take a half-hour recess while Brian goes and gets his
I
comments?
gotta tell you that your agenda right here is talking about the final. It's not talking about, you know, having comments on it. It's like review the final report. So I mean, we're all talking about final. We're not talking about the draft report. The other thing, I think the bigger picture that you're missing is that draft report and the remarks that each of you shared on it, right? I can understand why you were, Brian, you're expressing that you had pause, right? And, you know, I don't know that you're necessarily practicing more. I still practice law full time, right? So like for me, I'm not gonna violate the law, right? I mean, if I'm retired, I might go, well, you know, whatever. I mean, I got a problem with this, but what the heck, right? But I do it full-time. I'm not gonna like put my ticket at jeopardy by basically submitting comments by what I understood was designated as a deadline. And I'm not gonna reach out to engage in deliberation on it and say, let's talk about it and come to a consensus, when I know that should happen in an open meeting and we should have arrived at a decision on it. I'm just not gonna do it. And, you know, at this point, I was, you know, effectively aggrieved by not having that opportunity and being in this Hobson's choice of violate the law and send my comments over, or don't violate the law by not sending my comments over. That's where I was left. And, you know, that was on the draft report, and so that aggrieved me, but the public as well. The public is entitled to hear the colloquy that goes on that leads to the final decision. The tweaks that we make, things of this, they're entitled to hear that. That's part of the open meeting law. The legislative purpose is clear. We're not to engage in basically, you know, kind of behind the scenes, even if it's the most innocently meant, this is, we can do it this way, and people don't mean it. I don't mean to ascribe that there was some bad intent here, but the public is entitled to hear that colloquy. They didn't. That's a problem. And, you know, as I said, I'm not ready to present my comments on the report here this evening. And I think, you know, you can blow this off. You can just say, the heck with it. Brian, just go sit in the corner, right? Put baby in the corner. And problem is that you're leaving yourself exposed. And like I said, I might disagree with your recommendation, right? But the fact of the matter is, I want this thing to basically be on sound legal ground so it doesn't get challenged, and the value of it to the commissioners is lost. What's the problem with another week or two to do this right, cure the problem, and then basically wrap it up and vote on it? I don't see what the problem is here. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't see what the
point.
problem is with trying to cure it tonight. If
I
you
think
have a
it's
problem
stated.
with it, then let's cure it. That's the cure.
You can't amend the agenda now. And
We can amend it
you are
with
viol-
discussion items.
You are denying the public the opportunity to have heard this. As I presented before, I said, this all talks about final. And people were saying, they've done their deal, they're just gonna vote on this thing, I'm not coming. And some of the public, if they'd seen that there was draft and comment, others would have come and had the opportunity to sit and hear that, and that's been denied to them. So I think there's a problem here, and I don't know why it's such a, you know, curing it in the fashion that I'm suggesting is such a problem. The other thing is, you know, I would sign the final report if you do what I'm saying, because, you know, I reviewed it, and I would sign it, but I'm not gonna sign it if I think I'm violating the law. That was my problem. And you know, so you can vote on it tonight, go ahead, but I'm not signing it. You can wait till, you know, a week or two, and I'll sign it. I'll still probably disagree, but I'll sign it. So, your choice, and Dave, you do what you do. I know you do what you do when you do.
Can I make
And
a
go for it.
comment, Mr. Chairman? Dave doesn't do what he does. We do what happens here. And I think that really needs to be emphasized. No one here thinks that we're blowing you off, Brian. I mean, if you're saying something, we think it's important. We assess it, we evaluate it, and I have. Now, I have a code of ethics. I don't have a legal ticket like you do, but I do have a code of ethics that I've lived by all my life. And I think you do too, if only in the law, in the legal profession, but as a human being, you have one. I really feel you're exaggerating the importance of this draft comments on a report that didn't change the report. It is the same report that would come out whether we discuss whatever comments each person had. And I reviewed both the draft and the original. And at the time, I thought, this is exactly what we discussed. We got from point A to point B, and that summarizes it. That was our job as a study group. We have done that. And as far as going further, it's not up to any one person, it's up to the group here. And if there's no further discussion on the actual presentation of the report, then I'm ready to make a motion on it.
A motion there, we can discuss.
Well, I have to disagree with Phil. I put in here, as I just read, this may require compliance with open meeting law, because I was assuming that we were going to discuss what was placed into our suggestions or our comments that were sent to the subcommittee. I did feel it was appropriate to send them to the subcommittee because they were a subcommittee. There wasn't a quorum, but I did believe that they would also be distributed at some point. They are not distributed today. The agenda says presentation of final report. We've made it very clear that there's a distinction between the draft report and the final report. The agenda says final report, so we're not discussing the draft report. So I have to disagree with Phil, and I agree with Brian. We cannot move forward on this issue today because we are not discussing the draft report. We're discussing the final report. That's all we're doing tonight. And I think it's very clear because all along there's been a distinction made. Draft report, final report. And we also haven't had these comments distributed to us. And I'm not blaming anyone. This process has been confusing, and I think at times there have been assumptions made that we didn't all share, but we'd find something in the agenda and we'd go, I wonder what that means. And we've seen that issue come up tonight. And no offense, Mr. Botting, but you're saying, well, we can just cure this now. And well, we know that we can't cure it. We can't amend this agenda. It says final report. The public was acting on this. So I have to disagree respectfully with Mr. Ward on this one.
I would like to make a comment on the differentiation between the final report and the draft report. The draft report no longer exists. We have a final report based on the draft report and the comments that were made in a timely manner. This is the report before us right now. If there are comments to be made, that is the point of the discussion, the review of the final report. We are not reviewing the draft because it no longer exists. This report is what exists. We should be discussing this at this point. And I believe that what we can do, since we're discussing the final report, we can discuss the content of that final report. And the content of that final report includes the legal opinion. It includes the comments that were made. We can cure all of your issues right here, right now. Would anyone like to discuss the legal opinions?
Well, before we go on to that, I want to make a motion to table discussion of the final report. Perhaps we should have named this proposed final report. Perhaps that would have been more clear to people because it isn't the final until we've all voted on it. But I'd like to suggest that we table the discussion of the final report, move to discussing any other items that are open from that have occurred since our last meeting, and then figure out how we go forward with an agenda for next week and potentially after that.
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, call for vote. Vote to table. I see three. The motion fails. I repeat, is there a discussion of the legal opinions that we received? If there is no discussion of the legal opinions that we received, then I consider the issue of the legal opinions cured. They have been made available for this group to discuss in an open meeting. You have chosen not to do so. You have no argument with them apparently. Therefore, they can stand.
I understand the legal opinions because it said there's red line in them. There didn't appear to be red line. I'm sorry. So, those opinions didn't address the question, by the way.
It's on now.
So on the one about like the study commissioner, the commission manager being able to, what is the extent of his authority? Is it exclusive authority as the executive of the county to nominate and appoint two boards and commissions? Is that exclusive unto him, or does he have to do it, he or she, with advice and consent? That was kind of like what was stated that's one of the questions. Mm-hmm. And the response, when it came back, it was interlaced into I think in the question itself or something like that, and it said, see the red line. I saw no red line in there, so I don't even know that we got a response. I looked at it kind of carefully and went, I don't really see a direct response that addresses this question at all. So I thought, this guy needs to explain, like, where's the answer to this question? Because I don't see it, and I still don't see it in looking at it. So, I mean, in terms of legal opinions, I just didn't think I even got an answer. I mean, so that's one thing. I was concerned, like, what was the answer to this question, right? But we didn't have a meeting where I could bring it up until kind of now. As to, how that might be taken into account in the draft report, I don't know, but I mean, it plays into some of the strengths and weaknesses discussion, I'm sure. I don't know that the draft or the final even mentioned that, so I think that's kind of important, like, this is a question, we don't really have an answer, right? So I thought, well, you're not mentioning this at all in the draft, nor do I recall seeing it kind of in the final. Another thing was, I thought somewhere in the interim here, somebody from like the clerk's office or the auditor's office sent a letter, and it was kind of the way things set up. Like, remember, Dave, after the presentation on January 26th, I said, look, I think we need to go back and hear from some of these people that we didn't ask particularized questions about, like the budget officer moving from the clerk auditor's office over to the commissioners, right? Like, what are the implications of that, right? And maybe we should have somebody in, because they were here previously earlier in the year, we weren't attuned enough to really focus on that issue and what the implications were. We just kind of asked them the general questions, right? But we didn't really focus on the whole thing about what are the implications of moving this over, right? And I know you have opinions about it, like it's a benign thing. It just it moves in the org chart, right? But so you had basically said, well, we're not going to have more people. We're not going to have people back that we already heard from, and we're not going to do that. But if they want to send us a letter and explain something, then they can do that. My understanding was they did, and that letter was sent in the interim between when our last meeting was and now. We've never had any discussion of what was in it, but what was in it was links to a bunch of things where in the state of Utah, one of the states that Kristen in her presentation on like 5 part-time manager type form of governments with a commission manager type, Kristen had mentioned, Utah was one example. And that's kind of a recent thing, but when I started looking at what the the clerk auditor had sent over in that letter, which they did because you said, we're not gonna meet with them, they can send in a letter. It happened in this break that we've been in. We never talked about it. I don't see any reference to it, but what they did say in it was kind of eyebrow raising, because they said down in Utah, they have a statute that allows commissioners in a commission form of government to basically say, we're gonna take from the clerk auditor the function of the budget officer. We're gonna do it. And then at least 2 counties, Unitas and Utah, they indeed did that, right? And it's a fairly recent thing. They did that, and it's been happening in the last year or so and things like that. And in Utah, they have a state auditor who audits the counties. And in the state auditor's report, they brought up that problems were already emerging by moving this, what was considered a fairly benign thing, where they would just move the budget function over to the commissioners. And within a year's time, in these 2 counties, the state auditor was raising red flags saying, by doing that, it might seem benign, but really these guys, by having that authority over the budget through manager, they are shifting things around in that budget that are very curious, and they are raising concerns because some of this budget money is federal money. And it was COVID money. It was CARES Act. And the state auditor was raising, there's some funny things going on here with the way that they have this flexibility to adjust the budget mid-year and move things around. So much so was it a concern to the state auditor with respect to these 2 counties that they had a hearing in the legislature on it, And at that hearing, the consensus was, we are going to propose legislation in this year's legislative session, which takes this authority away, the authority for commissioners to take the budget officer function under their silo, away from the clerk auditor. This is exactly what we have here. We've not even, I read the links in the letter that the clerk auditor here sent us that referred to these articles, the video in the legislature. I went through that. I wrote up stuff. I didn't submit it because it was gonna violate the open meeting law, in my opinion. So I didn't do it. There's more to it. I'm just summarizing, but bottom line is, that's something we didn't even deliberate on. It's not even mentioned in the final. No mention of it whatsoever in the final. And I think that's really important for the commissioners, because there's things that we could have done to remedy that, which is, with your commission manager form, the recommendation could come over that they need some additional controls to ensure that what happened there doesn't happen. Why not, even if you did the commission manager, or maybe if you didn't do it, maybe there's a better recommendation, which is, remember, Kristen, you raised a concern about, like, any idiot would know that you don't put the audit function under, like, the budget officer and the auditor shouldn't be in the same silo. Of course, this makes sense. Remember that? Like, move it over to the commissioners. You don't want those two things with the budget officer and the auditor being the same. Move the budget officer here. Any idiot should know that, right? Well, that's apparently in Utah, they do know that, and they know that that's a problem, doing it that way. I was just taking your word for it, but when I read it, I saw there's real problems. But the way to cure that here could be, instead of our recommendation, which we never deliberated further on with this new information, you could just split the auditor's office away from the clerk. It could be separate. You can do that.
No, actually, you can't.
Yeah, you can. So you could do that, or you
The
could put
auditor's
the.
office is in the clerk under statute.
I'll find the provision for you. I wrote it up, Dave. You could do it, but I can agree to disagree and respect that you disagree. I'm just saying, we could have taken that up. We could have had that debate. I could have had the substance. Moreover, we could have found other ways to say, when this thing goes over to commissioners about do a commission manager, you need to be mindful that there are problems. There's no mention of any of this Utah stuff in the report whatsoever. I think that's something that would be good for them to know. So these are some of the examples. They're not exhaustive by any means. I feel aggrieved that, I was put in a position that I couldn't, that there was a deadline, and I felt I'd violate the law if I sent in comments, so I didn't. And the first opportunity, really, that I've had to, like, bring this up and discuss it in a way that doesn't violate the open meeting law, in my opinion, is now. And so, and I also think that this agenda is final. I don't think it cures it just by having this colloquy right here. I don't. That said, if you want to proceed, right, I'm not gonna sign. I think there's violations that can be cured by just a meeting or two more. What's the big deal? But if you don't wanna listen to that advice, fine, go ahead and vote. Close the discussion, let's vote. And, I would just say, maybe all of you wanna be on notice, to preserve all records. Because if somebody sues, I certainly think you're gonna be sitting for some depositions for a couple months. All of us. And so, but we can avoid
Brian-
all of it by having two more meetings.
Brian,
I don't
again,
know.
I'd like to just ask, why didn't you bring this up to the county?
Well,
If I could just interrupt.
first
here.
of all,
Wait, could I interrupt here?
yeah,
I did put all three of you
No, I
on
said
notice.
Brian.
Well, it doesn't matter whether one individual did it or not. It was, you were on notice that there might be issues that were substantive. And
I said
I'm
the
not
same
blaming you, but I'm saying the notice was out there.
But then you participated, so
No, I-
again.
No, I sent it to, I sent it to a subcommittee. They could consider my comments, but then they had to be considered by all. So I was not participating in an open meeting law violation. I sent it to a subcommittee.
Yeah, and Brian, I'm not addressing your being upfront with it. I mean, I'm just trying to understand something. We're here tonight, and this is being sprung on us. Brian is saying that he could not do it, and I take his word that he did not feel he could do it without violating the code. So, okay, I get that. Totally get why he didn't respond an email. He felt that way, and that's fine. But he could have gone, and I'm just trying to get an answer. He could have gone to the county. He could have asked Nancy or Jonathan or anybody. You could have asked the lawyers to say, you know what, I'm concerned about this. Let's get ahead of it so that we would know that if we were, then we could have changed the agenda. We could have done a few things, but now we're here and there's a difference of opinion of where we are and how to cure it. And again, I'm not anyway knowing the answers to those. I do think that the titles or the way the agenda is real important. The agenda items are really important, how you name it, because it does need to be clear about what the intent was. Now, a final report, just like the final initial thing we did, the preliminary, whatever we called it, the preliminary recommendation, we discussed that, and I don't know what the agenda actually said at that one, but we discussed it, made changes to it, and then approved it at that time. So I just am trying to understand why proactively, because you did a lot of research, proactively you could not have, for respect for the group around the table here, that you could not have tried to bring it to somebody's attention, not us, so that we would be in a better place than trying to figure out, are we in jeopardy of having a problem or not? And again, these are your opinions and they're based on research and you have a legal background. But I also know that some things that you mentioned are what is being done today. So I'd be interested to find out if we are in violation or whatever. So that's really the question I was just trying to figure
I
out.
think the what ifs, I mean, and you might have done this and you might have done that. It wasn't done. I don't know that it serves us to any value to delve into Brian's mindset as to why he didn't do something. So
Well,
I think just
it does.
where
I
do we
think it
go
does,
forward,
Kurt.
I think
think
is
it does
important.
actually, because we're in a box now.
So number one, I can't request an opinion from the county attorney, the chairman can.
Right.
So I'm not gonna reach out and engage in deliberations that way.
Good point.
Okay, so that's your first point. And secondly, why didn't I go to Nancy Plouffe? Honestly, that never even occurred to me, to go and kind of go around it that way, because meetings are called by the chairman, okay? Nancy doesn't call meetings, to my understanding, that's my understanding. I didn't really even, that never even entered my mind as a thought, like I've never gone, I don't think, recall that I've ever gone to Nancy and asked for anything. She works for us, she's not like some vassal through which we kind of circumvent open meeting law to communicate with each other. Okay, that's, so, I just wouldn't even come to my mind, like, that I'm gonna reach out to Nancy and cue this thing up. There's no evil intent behind this. It is what it is. It's, you guys, we ended some meetings, that's okay. Chairman Bonding decided we've ended our meetings. And my assumption was we were gonna pick back up and have more meetings. Well, we didn't, and I haven't had the opportunity to bring this up in a way that I felt wouldn't violate the law until now. And so now I'm trying to bring it up, not because I enjoy this, but because I want you guys to basically have the report not challenged, right? And make sure that, so that the work that we did together, which is good work, stands. I don't know why that should be viewed as like some attack. I hope it's not. It's actually trying to say, let's make sure that we're bulletproof here. That's all.
You brought up two items. The first was the legal opinion. You said that because there wasn't a red line, no, you're right, the red line did not follow through. However, we received it, the font did not come through as a red line. However, if you actually read the opinion, there was a question, one or two items above yours that asked about the authority, the limits of the authority. And in that, he answered that there was no need to go for approval. It was not an advice and approval situation, that the manager had the authority to make the appointments as under the statute. So when your question, yes, so when your question came up down below, he referred to his previous answer, which responded to that. The second thing you brought up was Utah. Now, on page 5 of the auditor's presentation, he says his separation, the state auditor, his problem was the separation of duties concerns. His problem was that budgeting, accounting, financial statements, and grant management were all moved over. We're not moving those. In spite of what Dina said, what happened in Utah is not what we are proposing. We are proposing moving the budgeting over only. The problem we have right now, if you really want to look at it that way, is the same separation of duties concerns that they have in Utah, we have right now with all of this being under the clerk's office. The budgeting, the accounting, the payables, the auditing, the bank reconciliations, all of it's in one office, under one person. So if you want to talk about separation of duty concerns, we actually have a separation of duty concerns right now. Doing this moving of the budget officer will actually slightly improve the problem we have now. But Utah is not what we're proposing.
One of the things about the existing form we have with these functions, as you're saying, with those functions, the way they are now in the clerk auditor line of things, you're saying they're kind of clustered together. And Utah, the complainant state AG, if I understood you, or state auditor, I'm sorry, is along the lines of, well, look, budgeting was falling under the silo of the commissioners too, and they took over this budget officer. You're saying that came over too. That is not what you're proposing here, right? Wasn't aware of that, but at the same time, here in the existing form, we have an independent auditor, right? I mean, we've got this audit within the clerk's office, this auditing function that does these things, but there's an outside independent audit as well, right? So, I mean, when you evaluate, let's look at strengths and weaknesses of our existing form versus, the proposed form, right? One would think, like in the existing form, you'd want to mention, like, well, really right now, the way that it's covered, it might be perceived as a weakness, but at the same time, we have an outside auditor that does review this stuff. Now, I don't recall that we kind of mentioned that stuff, but that's something where it's like, look, in the existing form, we kind of have that covered. Maybe it's not a weakness, but it's just not mentioned. We're having a bit of a deliberation on it right now and want to think about what you're saying, but, I thought that information from Utah was germane. Didn't have an opportunity to kind of run through it with the commission, in light of the draft report. So I felt that was a lost opportunity and the ability to address it.
There will still continue to be an external auditor. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter where the audit function is in the structure. There is going to be an external auditor. There always is with these government positions, just like in most corporations, you have an external auditor. So that's not going to change.
If you've ever read an audit letter, the audit letters will say clearly that we are not responsible for finding fraud. We're not responsible for finding embezzlement. That's beyond our purview. If you are aware of what's been going on in this county, I don't remember exactly when it was, 5, 6 years ago, we had a problem with an embezzler in the clerk's office that was not caught by the external auditor, was not caught by the internal auditor. It was caught when that person resigned their position and their replacement looked at it and said, hey, wait a minute, there's something funny here. So as far as the external auditor fixing things, you can't rely on that. As far as the Utah complaint was not moving budgeting. The Utah complaint included moving accounting and the preparation of financial statements, which we are not suggesting. Therefore, what we are doing is not the same as what Utah did. Any further discussion of the legal opinions?
I actually have a couple of things. Dave, to answer your question about reaching out, statute 51-5104.2 says a majority of members can call for a meeting. But since we weren't meeting, that would actually violate the open meeting law anyway if we had a quorum deciding to have an open meeting. So I reached out, Bryant reached out, he didn't, basically with the same idea that what was occurring, and then Kurt sent me an email saying, no, our intention is just to gather everything to go over it in the open meeting in the preparation of the report, which is why then I sent it, because then it wasn't deliberation, it's just putting all the information together, same thing that Bryant was saying, then we would go over everything, and that hasn't occurred. But for Bryant, not one of us could call for a meeting, it actually has to be a quorum. And since we weren't meeting, that causes an issue as well. But you can look that up if you want and just verify that. Regarding the legal, I think the problem in the report on some of this is that you stated it as fact, but the lawyer's response was it's a reasonable interpretation that this is what is going to be involved. It's a plausible interpretation. So I think the report tweaked it a little bit and just said it as that it is a fact that the commission manager will, I'll have it right here. The duties of the commission, the scope of the county manager's responsibilities is limited to the jurisdiction departmental scope of the Board of County Commissioners. According to the lawyer, it's a plausible interpretation that that's what will happen. He says it right here. It's a reasonable interpretation that the manager will oversee all the BOCC departments. He doesn't stipulate it as fact. As far as the county personnel, he says it's reasonable to presume it means all personnel employed under the BOCC. And he says county personnel is not defined. So this is not accurate according to the legal opinion, because the legal opinion leaves maneuverability. I mean, theoretically, we got this legal opinion, assuming the commission manager gets in, we get a different legal opinion, and that guy says, or she says, no, they have complete authority across all departments. Part of the reason, and Bryant referenced that a few meetings ago, is that because this has not been done in Kootenai County, there is no precedence, there is no legal ruling, there is no legal understanding. So it can change depending on the legal interpretation of whoever's reading the document. And that was not put in here. It was put in here that it's only this, and so we don't need to worry about it happening. He can't appoint the sheriff's advisory. Well, under this legal interpretation, there's a potential, maybe not a potential. Under another one, that could totally change. So with the report in here, I think the verbiage should change, that it is according to what this is. It's a reasonable interpretation. That's the legal feedback that we got. County personnel is not defined. And that the BOCC would not, absolutely not have the authority to override the decisions made by the commission manager. That was stipulated in there as well, that this is giving all of this commission manager that power. So I guess not wanting to cherry pick what the county attorney said, I think we should do an accurate representation, and I don't feel that it was accurately represented in there with the language that the county attorney provided.
Now, how come?
You don't want to cherry pick it, you did. Included in his statement was that there had been a court case which had determined that the county.
Thank you.
There had been, included in the legal opinion was the statement there had been a court case in which it was determined that the Board of County Commissioners and therefore their underlings had no authority over any other elected. Therefore, he would not be able to step into any electeds, and that was the basis of the opinion that we received. Not just one lawyer's opinion, but a court case.
Well, that's not, then he contradicted himself in what he sent, because that's not what he sent in.
Yes, it is in what he sent in.
I will disagree with you on that one. It doesn't change the fact about the other stuff.
I guess the question, that wasn't in your write-up, so we didn't see that before. That was not in what Kurt transcribed from which we went over those a lot of points that you made.
Dave saying, do we have any issues,
No,
anything
no,
about
no,
the
I
legal
understand
opinion,
that, but
so.
I just want to make sure people, we didn't get that to be able to evaluate if we should change the language in there or not. I guess the question, again, going back to process, what are we going to do? Okay, because the report is, in a way, is not in a way, it is a requirement, we have to have a report. We probably will not agree, we definitely don't agree with the recommendation, okay, I get that. But we probably won't even agree in entirety on what's in the report. So you made some very good points there. I don't know if there'd be a majority of the people would agree that, of that interpretation of the report. I'm just trying to figure out is, what do we do? What is the next steps? Because the report, if we sit around a table all night tonight, and I know there's a belief we can't do this, but if we sat around the table all night and went through the whole document and asked people for their feedback, we probably will not come to an agreement on every change that everybody wants to make, type of thing. So the report is gonna be what it's gonna be ultimately. The recommendation and the way it was designed was the report would not ask people to approve the report, but approve or deny the recommendation. So we were trying to separate the actual report language from the recommendation on there. So what do? Do we go and, meet again? Do we not meet again? What do we do so that we could move forward on this? The recommendation, I don't think is gonna change any, and I think the difference and I said this a few weeks ago, and I think it's true, we all have a comfort level with the amount of information that we get. Some people are more comfortable with the information to make a decision. Some people would like additional information before they make a decision. But I suspect how much information that we get, Brian still will be his view, and that's perfectly okay. The question is it valuable to keep on trying to deal with what legal said or didn't say? We don't know what's going to happen in Idaho. If any county goes through this and does it, we don't know what will happen if somebody sues until the courts tell us what's going to happen. Legal has said to us, this is what they think is going to happen. And again, I'm more than happy, Tamara, and I'm sure Kristen and Kurt, we took your thoughts very seriously. We tried to really address your concerns. I wish I would have heard those concerns so that we could have discussed them and maybe made some changes to the report. But again, what do we do next? What's the next step? That's really the question.
Actually, not that anyone cares, but some of us have put a whole lot of work into this. Some of us stepped up and volunteered to do it. We actually, Brian was originally on the small writing committee. He said he didn't want anything to do with the process. He didn't support any of it, and he didn't want to be on it. Had you been on it, perhaps these things would have come out. So the three of us worked very diligently to the best of our ability to put together the report, which is a requirement. Like Dave said, nobody's going to change their vote over this report. And also, we realized as we were writing it that there were things that we might have wanted to put in there that probably weren't appropriate because it's not within our purview as a committee to tell them how this is going to be implemented. So we actually tried very hard and pulled some of those things out that were either more opinion or more implementation oriented. So I don't know, I think we can talk for months more, we don't have months. And I think the bottom line is some people will sign it and support, and some will sign that they don't support. Some may choose not to sign at all, and I think that probably a month from now, we're gonna be right here where we are. And so the group can decide to do what they wanna do, and I will continue to be supportive and continue in my role, but it's really frustrating that someone volunteers, puts themselves out there, and then after all that work, and I'm talking a lot of work, you're basically saying that work just didn't matter because you didn't want to make a phone call to me or to Dave Botting, the chair, or whatever, and say, hey, can we talk about the process that these three individuals came up with, thinking that they were going to actually make it easier, because we know when we go round and round and round in a group, we don't get it anywhere. So we thought if we got individual ideas and we incorporated those, that we could come up with a report that would do the best it could to reflect what the process was and what the recommendation is. And, you know, if you'd like to pull out a page and tell me what's wrong with particular sentences, fine, but I don't know where we're going with this in terms of what we're supposed to add.
So if I could address what you're saying, I think you're missing my microphone.
First, as I began, I believe that I acknowledged the hard work that went into this.
It's one thing to acknowledge the work, and then basically you say, it's the typical thing of, you did a great job, and then you spend the next hour tearing somebody down. I don't want, I don't care
Your
anymore.
work is for if somebody challenges it and wins, and my recommendation goes to, why not make sure that your hard work actually
I
has
don't think
value?
you care about the hard work. I don't think you care.
It doesn't matter. Feelings don't matter here. Personalities don't matter. What matters is whether we follow the rules and do things right, and that's all Brian was talking about.
That's why I'm saying the group can just decide what they're gonna do, and I'll continue to do my part. But it just seems like we're, you know, it's 7 o'clock and we haven't, it's like a typical meeting where we just talk and talk and talk. Dave has said several times, others have said, so what do we do next? We don't get any recommendation, we just get another lob.
Well, I want to make a motion that we accept the final report.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Call for a vote. Accept the final report.
All the little minions.
We have 5. Vote passes. Report is accepted as it is.
Where's the sheriff?
No, let's move on.
Dave?
Moving on.
Go ahead.
I believe that we have an issue on the approval of the minutes for this meeting. Jonathan, did you do some research on that?
Yeah, so it.
They're gonna litigate anyway, right?
So essentially, you have to form a small subcommittee. From that small subcommittee, you just approve the minutes. We do have to notify the public that you're having a meeting. So there has to be an agenda, one item agenda to approve the final minutes. That subcommittee can meet informally just to approve the final minutes. That's it.
When you say we notice the public, is that a public meeting?
Yes.
We have to have here?
Yes, or, well, you can
You said
meet.
that- You said they could be privately.
Yes, you can
Conflict.
meet, you can meet informally, but we have to notify them in so many days advance that is happening, just like a normal agenda.
But we still have to be, it's an open meeting. So therefore, we have to be, at least one person has to be here in the room if you even do a Zoom call. And it's allowed to have one person here. So that's my
But
understanding.
it's like a subcommittee. This
Okay.
is a subcommittee.
So
that's
it's
meeting.
totally not even, okay,
We still need to notify the public that you're having a subcommittee to meet, so that you have an agenda.
okay.
Yep.
And does a subcommittee have to be 5 people, Jonathan, or, go ahead,
It would have to be the majority.
right, have to be 5, at least 5 people? Okay.
Okay. Do I have volunteers for a subcommittee to approve the minutes from this meeting?
I don't know how I'm gonna write. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine, I mean, Brian, are you,
How do we ever get out of this, though? If the subcommittee meets, it's gonna have minutes that it approves it, how do they approve?
no, it's just a
those
one agenda item, just says minutes approved.
minutes? Okay.
Yeah, that's why we tried, Kurt, to figure out how to do this. because usually an advisory board doesn't end. It perpetually goes on, so the minutes are always approved.
Never mind. I'm not gonna do it.
Okay, so is it,
Dave, you was, I believe volunteered. Phil, did you volunteer? Kristen?
As long as it's a Zoom call?
yeah,
I'll join, that's 5. Okay. That's, I
I will send,
believe
I
that
will,
resolves
I will
that.
send out the minutes to everybody to give, make sure that any comments you have, we'll have another dilemma here. But I will send out the minutes to everybody, so everybody sees the minutes, and then, I don't know if I made a mistake, what we would do on that, but,
Well, then shouldn't we still have an open meeting to verify all of that? Because otherwise, if there's any issue with the minutes, then,
yeah.
I mean, it's all, you can't just approve it online. That's not,
no, and that's why, Tamara, I really was trying to get an answer from Jonathan about how you do it. The assumption is that the minutes would be okay, but I don't know the answer. So I don't want to do anything that's going to be different on that. Normally, what we do is we send it out, pretty much.
Right.
And then generally, the minutes are approved as submitted. Occasionally, there have been a couple of changes months ago, but generally, they are approved. But
we do that in a public meeting.
yeah,
Just,
Yeah.
just plan to have another.
yeah, I think what'll happen is that it doesn't have, as long as it's 5 people, you could do it in a public meeting. And if you want to, I mean, obviously, we'll figure it out about inviting, if you could attend if you want. It doesn't stop you from attending.
I think the best thing is to have that subcommittee, as Jonathan recommended.
Yeah.
Have the subcommittee meet as a public meeting. And if any member of the commission has comments on the minutes, corrections, adjustments to the minutes, they may attend that meeting and make their recommendations. That way, anybody in this group will have the opportunity to make any adjustments they want. But we won't be having a full commission meeting, because apparently that may raise a question of, now we have minutes for that meeting.
Yeah, it's,
Well,
Yeah,
wouldn't you anyway with a quorum?
well, Again,
We've been told that the
Jonathan's the- I
subcommittee
have
that's-
no-
it will work.
yeah, I don't know. Jonathan's is the one that did the research. I just asked a question. So I don't know, Tamara, what the right approach is. I just wanted to have an answer on that. And Jonathan, basically what he said was that you can get a subcommittee to approve the minutes. Your point is the subcommittee would have to accurately say that the minutes are good.
Just to give context, there's groups that sometimes, they meet maybe once a year,
Yeah,
and you can't wait a whole year to approve your minutes for the whole, that just wouldn't make sense, right? So instead of doing a meeting, like say an annual meeting committee, right? You delegate a committee for the minutes to approve it. That way, you're not waiting a whole year to approve your minutes.
okay.
That's kind of where it comes from. Hope that clears it up.
But Jonathan, to that point, does that mean there would be an issue if everybody shows? Or what's the difference between 5 and 9? I mean, if you have a quorum and making a decision, why is there a difference between 5 and 9?
There isn't.
Well, but Dave was saying that there would be a problem if everybody showed.
No, I was simply saying we follow the advice and do a subcommittee. And if other people outside the subcommittee want to attend and make comments, make changes to the minutes, they're welcome.
And there would be an agenda that would be posted for that to show when the meeting is, and it's just
Yeah.
following the same process, the same protocol.
And
The only things done on it would be the approval of the minutes.
that's what,
That's my understanding. from
yeah,
what I heard
that's
from
what John,
Jonathan.
it's a one agenda item thing. And again, as long as one person is in the room, the others could be done via Zoom if we have to.
Okay, so just for clarification, you guys voted to accept the final report as is, which means none of the other comments that people put in, there will be no more discussion, you're not gonna go over all of that, you're saying that it is a done deal and that, Brian will not have any participation and our comments that we submitted will not have any public discussion. Is that what you just voted on? I'm just clarifying.
We voted that the report is accepted as written. Brian had well over an hour of input tonight, and he chose to make the input one item.
No, what, Tamara?
Okay, so you're saying that I am correct? You're taking it as is, there will be no more discussion?
That's correct. Okay. I will make the notice, is next Wednesday good for the five,
Yeah.
for the four of you?
If I can, I'm gonna try to figure out how to do these minutes if I don't. I'm gonna need your help, Brian,
Yeah.
on at least giving the 3 points that you made. I wrote them down, but I'm not sure I got them exactly right. Okay, what time? The video, unfortunately, the beginning of this, the video was not, thanks to, I'm sorry?
Available, the public meeting was not made available to the public. I wonder if that was by intent.
I have-
His comments are not on record.
Jonathan, would you
You're
like to
sitting here,
comment?
this is a public meeting.
Would
Yeah,
you like
Jo-
to comment?
The entire thing was made publicly.
So the YouTube server did crash. It is being recorded. The full meeting will be uploaded fully. It's not by law to have it on YouTube. We do that just to do it.
So, okay,
It will be uploaded fully after this meeting.
So you can
YouTube servers crash.
yeah,
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan.
good.
Thank you. Do we have anything else before we call for a motion to adjourn?
I think you have 16 that you need to get through, don't you?
What
The
cur-
signing?
Yeah.
The five of us can sign
Well, if,
after the adjournment, I would believe.
if,
We've discussed who's going to sign it.
and, yeah, we don't have to limit it to the five. Anyone who's here can.
Will any of the four of you agree to sign?
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Thank you, Kurt.
Brian?
Brian to Brian.
Brian? Bryant has already said he's not going to sign. Are you willing to sign? That's fine. Then we have 6 people who will sign. You will sign in opposition. Call for adjournment? Do we have a motion?
Move.
Motion, second, vote to adjourn? We're adjourned.